Is that live?
Yeah, well, I'm now, Chair.
Thank you. Right, good morning everyone to the Corporate Services and Economic Growth Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 9th of November. So going to the agenda, can I have apologies for absence, please?
Apologies from Councillor Ken Parry.
Thank you. Any others? Everybody else is here? Yeah, okay. Minutes of the previous meeting on the 12th of October has been circulated. Are we happy there to record? Everybody, just nod if you're happy. Yep. Okay, thank you. Disclosure of members' interests. Item 3. No. Okay. Next is Appendix A, which is the forward plan of Cabinet decisions for information. Just note, and there's a couple of decisions there, including looking at today. Going forward, anyone would like to note on that?
Yeah, nothing to add, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next one is the scrutiny of Cabinet reports. The first one is the report of the Executive Director of Finance, which is the budget and medium-term financial plan. I think my understanding is Nick's going to introduce this one, and then Chris is going to sort of mention the detail that needs to be mentioned. So, Nick.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a sort of, I suppose, an interim report, really, just setting out the process as it has happened so far, and the remainder of the process as it's going to happen between now and presentation of a full budget in February. I think the first thing to say is, obviously, it is every year it's a complex process setting a budget for an organisation as large and as complex as this one. This year is probably harder than ever because there's a degree of uncertainty. We're living in obviously we're living with COVID at the moment, and that brings with it a lot of uncertainty. We are expecting a 1 year, well, we are going to receive a 1 year settlement in December, which is not, any different to the previous 2 years, but we had hoped this year for a 3 year settlement. Understandably, with all of the national uncertainty, government have decided to do a 1 year settlement and do the comprehensive 3 year spending review next year. Paragraph 4 sets out a number of other areas of uncertainty, which are really around sort of future government funding, and that should become clearer as we head into next month. There's a bit in the report around the assumptions. Obviously, any budget is based on a lot of assumptions. Some of those assumptions can come in better. Some of those assumptions might come in worse. But they're really around the government funding and COVID. It also sets out the details of the timetable. So we begin online consultation shortly. There will be a full scrutiny meeting. I think we discussed opening it up to all members in January. There will be a series of presentations at the local area council meetings in January, and we are proposing to do a sort of presentation, question and answer session, consultation session in January, which will be open to members of the public to submit questions. We haven't worked out quite the detail of how that's going to work, obviously with COVID and all of the restrictions. That can't be a face-to-face meeting. We have to, there's basically a gap at the moment of £8.3 million in terms of savings for next year. We are confident that we will be able to deal with that, and it may come from a combination of finding additional savings or some use of reserves. And the council obviously is in a healthy position to with its reserves. Page 8 sort of describes the sort of allocation of the remaining savings across the different service areas, and that's done proportionately broadly across according to how big the service area is. So the larger service areas have to find a larger proportionate saving. There's not much detail about capital in this report, but there has been, well, the fact there still is being a degree of reprofiling, and we've reported recently in the reprofiling that's happened this year, but we're also reprofiling future years as well. So some of the projects that might have started this year or early next year may be pushed back into the following year as part of the 3-year medium-term financial plan. So COVID is obviously causing delays in some of the large projects, but as I think I stressed at the council meeting, we do remain ambitious in terms of delivering these projects, and many of them will improve the lives of our residents. We're investing in education, in leisure, and we're doing a lot in terms of economic regeneration, not least with the Northumberland line. So the position we're in at the moment has been sort of worked on. I'd just like to sort of thank the officers, lead officers in every service area have had a hand in this, and have worked very hard to get to the position we're in. I'd also like to thank my cabinet colleagues who've done the same, and there's been a whole series of kind of smaller meetings going through service area by service area. So we've got an agreed position at the moment that officers and members have agreed, and subject to sort of no big shocks in December with the funding review, we feel that we'll be able to sort of continue on this basis. So I'll stop there. I'll ask Chris if there's anything that's sort of really important I've missed, sorry, and otherwise we'll just take any questions.
Chris, okay.
I am, yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor. I think you've covered that quite comprehensively. Perhaps I'd maybe draw attention to the principles on page 3, which is how the savings have been developed and worked through. So, namely, they are achieving a balanced budget over the life of the MTFP whilst maintaining modest and sustainable increases in council tax, using investing to save, ensuring alignment with the corporate plan, keeping reductions in frontline services to a minimum, maintaining the council's strong financial position and sufficient reserves to address future risks, maintaining a commercial focus and maximising income generation and ensuring value for money. But other than that, Councillor, I think you covered everything quite comprehensively.
Okay, thank you. Right, I think I've got Councillor Seymour. Catherine?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for this report. I appreciate these are difficult times that we and the whole country have. I'm just wondering about the 1-year financial settlement for local government that's expected to be published at late December, and I'm just wondering, do you have any idea on the amount that we will be getting, and will that be enough, do you think?
Thank you. I think the sort of simple answer is no, not really, and yes, I hope so. I think we at the moment, government are going through that process, talking to MPs. They are, and ministers are all involved in similar processes down in Whitehall, and MHCLG will be no different in terms of the settlement for local governments. I don't think we're really getting any real sort of reading on what might happen. I think we've done quite a lot of lobbying. I think Glenn has been very busy, and Peter before him, writing letters, lobbying ministers, lobbying Secretary of States, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that we do get a good settlement. But I think at this stage it's probably too early to say.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or points to raise on this report? No? Okay, so this is going to go to Cabinet tomorrow.
Chair, yes? We've got our hands up, Malcolm and myself.
Oh, right, sorry, I can't see your screen. So, yes, if you go ahead then, sorry. You're frozen on my screen. Well, Trevor, go ahead.
I think Malcolm was ahead of me, if that's all right.
Okay, Malcolm, I'll let you first.
Thank you, Chair. Few questions for Nick. First of all, the savings. How much of the savings could be associated with the COVID, with the pandemic? I'll ask you one at a time.
Yeah, I think so basically the savings. One of the assumptions in the plan at the moment is that COVID pressures will be funded separately, and that's certainly largely been the case so far. We kind of one of the core assumptions is it's a sort of post-COVID COVID world. So the answer to that would be sort of neither positive or negative.
Okay. On one of your titles, you've got council tax and business rate tax base increases. Now, we don't set the business rates, so I'm presuming business rate tax base increases are talking about extra businesses that are likely to come on stream. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think the assumption there is that there will be a short-term reduction followed by longer-term increases. Obviously, I think there will be. I think as a sort of result of COVID, both with council tax and business rates, there will be some reduction in collection. But there's also a lot of very positive stuff happening in the longer term.
Okay, then we've heard maximising income generation, and we've heard that over the past few years as well. Have you got any idea how much income generation we managed to do this financial year?
I can't give you that off the top of my head. I mean, there's been. We do have that information. In fact, we've done returns recently for sales fees and income COVID claims, and I think that information. I think I'm right in saying, Chris, would probably be quite easily sort of found, and that could be, some of that could be shared. That give you an idea of the income generation that the council does generate.
It would be handy if we could have it over the last 2 or 3 years, to see which way we're going with it, because we keep mentioning it in these budget reports. The next thing is the. Yeah,
I think that would be okay, Chris, unless you tell me other.
No, that's fine. Yeah, we can do that.
The next question is about the children's services, where in one paragraph we're saying it's always overspent, this budget, and on another paragraph we're saying we're going to save over £1 million on it. Can you put those two?
Yeah.
sentences?
So what we're doing there is, I think we're basically rebasing the budgets, because this is an area that is constantly overspent, and there are increasing pressures, and it's not a reflection of bad delivery or anything like that. It is just an area where there are increasing pressures constantly. So there are, so basically the way that process works is the budget is rebased to take account of the reality of the service delivery, and then service cost reduction targets are sort of overlaid onto that. So one happens before the other.
So just to get this right, you're saying we're going to increase the budget on that to reflect the reality of the situation, but we're going to cut over £1 million out of it.
Yeah. So I think that is how it will work. So I think the net effect will be upwards, as it has been for the last 2 years. So the amount spent on children's services has been rising year on year.
Okay. My last question is about winter services. Where I live, I haven't noticed a particularly harsh winter over the last few years. And yet there's pressure on winter service budget. I'm just wondering, have you not budgeted enough, or have we failed to spend? I mean, why is there pressure on the winter services budget? Surely we should have had enough in that budget to cope with the winters we've seen over the last few years.
I think although the winter last year wasn't particularly harsh, I think the circumstances, I'm told, were if you get sort of some rain quickly followed by some relatively cold weather or below freezing weather, then you do get quite an impact on the roads. So we have overspent in that area in each of the last 2 years by over £1 million. And then that money has been found elsewhere within the local services budget. But we can't rely on that money being available this year, so the pressure is being reflected in the budget. So I think it maybe not been the harshest of winters, but it's been the wrong type of weather at the wrong time.
What leaves on the line?
It's not quite as bad as that, but yeah, I think it basically there is a pressure, and that money has been spent in each of the last 2 years. So it's not being, you know, we challenged that figure very hard in the meetings that we've had recently, and we've had we're confident that we've had a really comprehensive explanation of that, and that it is a real pressure.
Now, my last point, it's about economic regeneration, which is going to be very important if or when we bounce back from this thing, obviously. Are you assuring me, especially, that we're going to devote enough resources to make economic regeneration something all communities in Northumberland can see?
Yes, I mean, I can't absolutely say every single community in Northumberland, but because there may be, you know, some villages that don't, but basically there is a commitment to making sure economic regeneration efforts are focused right across the county. So in the rural areas, that's often about tourism and developing that economy, or it may be around forestry. In the more urban areas, it's around taking each of the towns and you know, looking at what the opportunities are in each of those towns. So that applies to Bedlington, it applies to Ashington, Blythe, Alnwick, Berwick, everywhere, and we're taking a town by town approach. And efforts, and it is a really important priority for us. To economic, you know, regeneration is a key priority for us, and we will leave no stone unturned in making sure that we take advantage of every opportunity to create jobs, to give people better economic prospects.
Now, you know, for the past few years, we've pushed Northumberland as a tourist destination, leisure destination, all the rest of it, and it's those very businesses that are suffering now. How can we, I know we've got the Northumberland Business Help and whatnot in, but how are we going to help those businesses? Because this is one area which we can still expand, we can still attract people, you know, when the time's right. They're going to need some help to get over the difficulties they've got at the moment.
Well, I think, Councillor Robinson, we are going to probably explore some of those COVID-specific measures in the next report, which will help us. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Session.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I knew I shouldn't have let Councillor Robinson go first. To be fair, one of his questions was virtually what I was going to ask myself, so I'll just sort of try to seek a little bit of clarification on a point, because the rest of what I was asking is going to be covered. But I'm basing on about the underspend, Nick, if that's all right, and whether a lot of the savings are due to the underspend. What I mean by underspend, if I'm saying, say, I'll just take a rough example, say something like the school transport budget, which is obviously funded. Now, I know it's a contract, so, you know, you have your obligations you have to pay. But if, say, you know, then they're getting half their staff furloughed, they're not paying the diesel fees and this, that, the other. So do we make savings on our contract to say something like that? And it could be generalised around all the other subject areas as well.
Yeah, so I think there's two things going on in some areas. So to take school transport as an example, there are two factors. There's a COVID factor, which is obviously, you know, I think we were very generous with school transport providers and tried to do everything we could to keep them afloat, because obviously, you know, as school started back in September, we knew we would need them, and it was really important to support them. So we did everything we could to support them. But there's also been a general underspend in school transport that has been effectively largely removed from the budget going forward. And that was in part, I think, down to the estimation of reintroducing the free school transport for sixth formers. So, you know, which was obviously a key manifesto pledge for us back in 2017. That hasn't been as expensive as was originally projected. So that's now reflected in that budget. So where there's a constant underspend or overspend, it is always best practice to try and rebase that. And that's generally, it doesn't always happen, but it's generally what does happen.
Thank you.
Right, has everybody else got their hands up? Some of you are frozen, so I'm not entirely sure. Anyone want to speak? No? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next report, which is the COVID report. I think Councillor Sanderson is going to introduce this one.
Good morning. I'd like to ask Daljit to just lead on this, and then I've got a couple of specific points I'd like to make at the end, if that's okay.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Daljit, can you talk us through this one?
Thank you. Yes, thanks, Chair. So this report really was written at a time where the council was in tier 2, as you'll see from the report, and the arrangements for a countrywide lockdown have come in subsequently. So really that's the context here. Obviously, the local restrictions had put in place some support to businesses and other organisations, but these have recently been overtaken by the national arrangements. This report has been to each of the scrutiny committees, so we will just highlight the areas in relation to this scrutiny committee, and mainly that is around regeneration, business support and job creation. So very recently we have had notification last week in terms of some guidance around revised business grant arrangements. There are 4 types of arrangements which should members require, Chris Hand can run through for us. We've also had support of about £1.5 million from North of Tyne Combined Authority, which is supporting us particularly with the business arrangements. And this report then also goes on to set out for us some of the corporate services type arrangements for the council. So these arrangements for us are really our IT, HR, communications, finance and democratic functions. The vast majority of these services have transferred very successfully to home working, and particularly the IT team have done a great job. Not only have they supported working from home, but they've also ensured that all council services continue to operate as effectively as possible. So in terms of just a bit more general information about council services, we have set out to members a detailed note about where we are with current service arrangements. I'll just do a quick run through of that. In terms of leisure, clearly all facilities were required to close, but some virtual services are available. Bin collections are operating as usual. Bulky waste is available, except for some large equipment. Business and commercial waste is available. Cemeteries are open to the public. Cremations and burials continue. The coroner's service is available remotely. The country, town and play parks are open. And our digital customer services contact points are operating, as are garden waste collection, household waste recovery centres and housing visits and repairs. Alongside that, clearly our adults and children's functions continue to operate. In terms of our business grant arrangements, as I said before, we have had some guidance last week. The team have been busy all weekend just working through that, and we will update members and the public as soon as that's available. We have had quite a number of contacts already about that scheme, so we would ask people to just bear with us whilst we get the absolute guidance of the legislation in terms of ensuring that the arrangements are correct. And we're hoping that in the next week or so we will be able to set out the clear arrangements for that. So really, that was just a quick introduction to the report. Clearly, for corporate services, it's mainly about some of our business and regeneration functions. So I'm happy to hand over to the leader.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you very much. Well, it's some of this, and quite a bit of it, is actually slightly out of date now, obviously because of the time that's gone, and the fact we're in our second lockdown stage now. I would just say on that I think it was demonstrated quite clearly that our working alongside our neighbouring authorities from September did have a very beneficial effect on the amount of cases we had in Northumberland. And that's why I want to continue that working relationship with the neighbouring authorities as we go forward. And we need to be talking to government on a fairly regular basis now, I think, about the next steps and what that might mean for us. What I would say is that this report highlights just how effective this council has been over the past period in being able to deliver all the frontline services as well as it has. And all of you, I'm sure, as local members will have had compliments from members of the public about, for example, our bin collection service and the way that that's been carried out, and the general front-facing attitude of our staff, whether they've been fixing roads or collecting bins. And I really do need again to say thank you to them, all of them, at all levels of the council, for continuing to provide the service that they have. I'm particularly pleased with the development of Northumberland Communities Together. That is raised on page 13, and it gives you some indication of just how effective that's been. I think we saw in the half-term break the initiative that we began to help out to provide support to families that needed it, and children who were eligible for free school meals. That actually went remarkably well in the time that we had to do it. And I'm particularly pleased, as most of you will know, that the government have announced a change in their position on this, which will mean that we have significant extra support to be able to provide that service from Christmas through to Easter. So I'm very grateful for that. On page 14, it does talk more about the unemployment issues, and I'm worried about this and about the effect, as we all are, that COVID's had on our businesses, whether they be small operators in little villages in the Rothbury area, say, or the Cheviots, or out in the west, or the bed and breakfast in Berwick, or the larger hotels in other parts of the county. All of those businesses have suffered significantly. They have had assistance from government, of course, and they've had assistance insofar as we're able to give them assistance from the county council as well. But there is going to be a big recovery job needed. And we are doing all we can as a council to help facilitate that, giving them help and advice now, and working closely with government, as I said right at the beginning, to make sure we keep that dialogue going with government, so that we can ensure that when we come out of this stage, however long that will last for, the next stage takes into account the effect on businesses and livelihoods and employment for the county, because we have to come out of this quickly and soon. So we are simply very much on the ball. We have been throughout the last period, and it's very important that we continue to be so going forward. Okay,
thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Right, any questions or queries on the report? Councillor Bailey? Councillor Bailey?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just unmuting. Thanks, Glenn. Glenn, this question's kind of been over.
Who's gone mute again? I think you've muted yourself or something, but I hear you. Yeah, start again, sorry.
This question's been overtaken, Glenn, by sort of events with lockdown. But many residents are wondering why we went in with other authorities when figures in Northumberland were relatively low. And they're worried that when we come out of lockdown, if we go to a tier system, we will be lumped with them. can you explain the rationale behind the thinking of why we should go with the other city authorities?
Yeah, it was a difficult decision to make, in that it was clear that there were some areas of Northumberland that just didn't get or understand or accept the decision that we made. But we took that decision entirely on public health advice. We were told that interconnectivity of Northumberland and the passage that people take every day, whether it's school or business or leisure, is such that if we had not taken that step, we would have seen a rapid increase in cases. As we saw in the briefing recently, and government's figures show, that the level of cases and therefore the amount of deaths were much lower than they might have been. And so therefore it was that cautious approach that was right. Now, I think you're right to say we need to be very careful about what we do next. I think it's important that we keep the dialogue going with the local authorities nearby, because government have recognised, and our local MPs have recognised, the value in working with them. However, it is absolutely crucial that we make sure that Northumberland, whilst working closely with the neighbouring authorities, is very much a special case and needs to be treated like that. Because ultimately, I mean, I think at the end of the day, I have to continue to take public health advice. I would be completely wrong to not do that. However, it's also incredibly important that business continue to make their voice heard in all of this, and ensure that we try and carry everybody with us as we go forward. But it's not going to be easy. It's very hard on all of us, as we know at the moment. We will do whatever is the correct thing to do in terms of public health and also the benefit of all our residents. I don't know whether, Dalji, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think, Glenn, you've covered that well. I think the only other issue I would say is, if you look at the announcement just when lockdown was made and the expert information that was provided, we could see from the graphs presented about the regions that the Northeast was the only region that had started to have a slight dip in numbers and cases. So I think these decisions are difficult, but that decision was called correctly and gave our communities the opportunity to slow down any spread. And what we do hope is that that very much will be, given that was recognised centrally by the Chief Medical Officer, we do hope when we have the discussions nationally now in the next week or two about what tiers or areas may go into, that will enable us to be in the most minimum tier possible.
Councillor Swithenbank?
I've just been listening to this part of the conversation with a great deal of interest. Daljeet, I'm guessing one of the problems we have about working with other authorities and government rules is that they were treating councils as in areas as an entirety rather than subdividing them. And we have a very unusual profile that's not really replicated in any other county council, where you have 50% of your population and 3% of the landmass. So you could have high figures there, yet overall within Northumberland, because of the sparsity in the rural areas, it wouldn't show up. But I suspect for the government and their rules on what tier you're in, they would always treat Northumberland as a single entity. So if you're in the rural areas, you might not understand why decisions are made. But as I say, when you take, I'm guessing, if I'm wrong, Dalji, tell me, but I'm assuming the fact that it had to be treated as a single entity, where it was in a particular tier or not, dictated, given what I understand was a pickup in the disease, COVID-19, in the southeast, really triggered the decisions that were made. Or am I misreading this?
I think, Councillor Swithenbank, partly that is correct. I think the other thing is we did receive a Cabinet Office visit the week prior to the national lockdown being put forward and announced, and we did have a slot in that visit, and we did feel that the Cabinet Office who were leading that visit did very much recognise the differences of Northumberland. But I suppose it's like all difficult decisions. You need to make a call at a point of time, and you know it's based on the best information at the time, and the call was made on the basis of the best public health information we had, but with the full knowledge that we need to protect our businesses and our economic arrangements. So I think it's been a, well, if there can be, given unfortunately, you know, the number of deaths, etc., and we feel for every family, but it's the best call that could be made at the time. And I'm thinking about families and people who are vulnerable and unwell. I think sometimes the majority of the population then, you know, needs to, which they are very much in Northumberland. Everyone's been very supportive, very helpful. Our communities have been brilliant. So it has enabled us, some of those restrictions, which we've all had to take on board, have then supported us to protect the NHS, protect our intensive care beds, and make sure that patients and people who are shielding or vulnerable families are well supported. And I think there's no one right answer to this, and each time there will be the need to balance up all of the risks and ensure we represent our businesses and our communities well as ensuring the most vulnerable get the availability that they can.
Okay, I think Councillor Sanderson wanted to come back in there.
Yeah, thank you. If I could just say, Ian, that the choice was really pretty simple. It was either for me, as it was then, to take the decision to be cautious, or to risk going against public health advice and potentially then having outbreaks in places perhaps that hadn't or haven't had very much, but potentially they could have had outbreaks that could have resulted in people dying. And there was absolutely no way I was going to take that decision. I wouldn't then, and I wouldn't now, and I won't in future.
No, I think you took the right decision. You know, when you're dead for a long time, and people need to recognise that. And right from the very start, given my limited involvement with NHS through Northumbria, I have treated this extremely seriously right from the off. And when I watch some of the behaviour of people at turnout time partying in the streets, I have cringed. No, I think you did the right thing.
Okay, thank you.
Be safe than sorry.
Yes, that's a good motto, Councillor Sullivan. Right, we've got Councillor Seymour and then Councillor Robinson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, this council are doing a really good job under extreme circumstances for services and funding and their response and recovery. But also we have a crucial partner with the community and voluntary sector. So I just want to make sure that we are supporting them as much as we can, you know, with funding where we can, and so that's what I wanted to say about that. Okay,
got any response on that?
I'm happy to pick that up. Thank
you. Then.
I think through Communities Together, we've made a really good cross-county top set of partnerships, and there are numerous funding streams coming into that. There are core council funds, there are funds from government grants where they've been very supportive to enable us to support communities, whether that's clinically vulnerable patients and people, or residents who need other support, e.g. business support. I think a good example of one of the additional supports is, for example, the support provided by Benicia, who granted £100,000 into the county, and there's been a really good split of that funding, so into 5 lots where in each of the areas of the county. So a lead VCS organisation was identified in each of those areas. So Ashington, Real Deal supported us there. In Blythe, Blythe Valley CVA supported us. Bedlington and Cramlington, Leading Link supported the work. In the north, the Northumberland Voluntary Sector Forum supported it, and in the west, Adapt Northeast. So obviously I'm sure there'll be a whole load of other organisations who would have wished to have had direct granting like that, but and they have through the Communities Together Hub, but that's just one example of the excellent support that's gone into the VCS, which has come both from external organisations, our own funds, and central government.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions on the papers. Just a quick one. Communications are mentioned. Can I just ask that when residents get in touch with the council, they get an answer? It seems to be a particular problem. I know we've got back office problems at the moment, if you like, but it just causes a whole lot of concerns that don't really need to be there when they don't get an answer. My question is, democracy meetings and decision making. We've got an amended public speaking protocol. Does this apply to all meetings where members of the public had a right to have a say?
So could I just cover, sorry, Councillor Robinson, will you finish there? Could I just cover the issues around queries from the public? So generally, I think the teams, whether it's customer services or the services themselves, have done a really good job of responding to the many thousands of queries that come through. And I know just into individual, either directors or heads of service, we get hundreds a day. So if there's anything that you feel hasn't been responded to, we're more than happy for you to highlight that. I think the communications teams, whether they're the centralised team or the teams in the services, have done a great job of trying to keep the public messaging correct and on point. So if there are particular individuals who you feel haven't had a response, we're happy for you to send them through to us, either myself or the relevant director, and we'll pick those up.
Okay, thank you very much.
The public speaking at meetings, virtual meetings, I just want to make sure that in all meetings that we had public speaking, we've now got a protocol in place to allow public speaking.
I think Councillor Sanderson wants to come
in. Thank you for asking that question. You'll probably know that we've, I think we're back to almost full capacity in terms of meeting schedules now. And what we've done is it doesn't really matter on the time of day. These meetings are taking place now because they're being live streamed, but they're also staying on the YouTube channel for up to 2 weeks, so that people can have an opportunity to listen and hear. If they want to listen to us, that is, anytime over a period of 2 weeks. In terms of public participation, it's actually something I've been talking to Daljit about, and we are working on two things at the moment. One is around having a public question and answer session on COVID with herself and Liz Morgan and myself. And the other thing I want to do this year, which could be difficult, but I think it's something I would like to do, is to have a public session on the budget at a fairly early stage of the budget, so I can understand better what it is that people in the county want us to be focusing on more in terms of services, what they're really happy about and what they're not so happy about. So that will help us as a council help that budget process. So I want that to happen fairly soon, and I know that Daljit is onto that, and I think Nick Oliver as well. But I am definitely wanting to do that, even though I do admit it could potentially be difficult. But it's definitely something I want to do, and it might be the first and last time. We never know.
Can I just ask one further thing, Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Obviously, we're seeing businesses, and this is in terms of a COVID response, economic response. We're seeing private sector businesses facing huge challenges, a lot going to the wall, a lot probably won't make it. Are we as a county, with our budgets, going to be innovative enough to use potentially our capital budgets to spark interest in the private sector to come back? Is that the plan going forward?
Shall I pick that up?
Yeah, yes, please.
Yes, I think so, is the answer. We will do everything we can. And Malcolm, if you have any specific ideas on that, I'd be more than happy. And I'm sure Richard Wearmouth, as the Cabinet Member for Economic Regeneration, would too. We'd be happy to meet with you and discuss that. But yes, I think we need to do everything we can, because ultimately it's those businesses that you know, that pay the taxes and you know, we need and provide jobs. And so we do need to focus on that. And our role, I think, as a local authority, is to make sure that there is a really good environment for businesses to operate in, and that we do everything we can to encourage them to base themselves here, and do everything we can to support them, those that are already here.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Do we have any more questions on that? Just one point I'd like to raise. Just obviously the Councillor Robinson raised it earlier about the support we're getting from central government to help local businesses. Obviously that's evolving. I think the message we need to get out is that the team are working on the rules for these new schemes, and I think the important thing is that once this help is available, that we make sure that we get the message out to those businesses that can apply for this funding in a simple, clear and effective way, so they know what they can claim and how to claim it. I just want reassurance on that.
Yes, we have a briefing this morning at 11:30 on that, and we will be discussing it again tomorrow morning. But we'll get some message up as a sort of holding statement very quickly, and then we will, you know, obviously we'll aim to get the schemes live as quickly as possible. There's been some really good work done by officers on that already, and we will commit to doing that as quickly as we can.
Okay. And then Councillor Ruffhead, you indicated you want to speak there.
Me, did you say?
Councillor Ruffhead.
Right.
Thanks, Chair. Just following on the point from Councillor Robinson, about public participation in the forum for that. The Constitution has the provision, for what has previously been called the state of the area debate or the state of the county debate. Is that not a forum whereby we could utilise having members of the public submit questions on a virtual basis and have a discussion around the budget and COVID?
Yes.
With them? And just that was the first part, but what I wanted to ask specifically is, this is a really good comprehensive report, and obviously this is a constantly changing situation, and it's good to know what we're doing as a council, but I think it's important that we appreciate and understand what's going on within the regional and partnerships area as well. And I've previously said this at this committee, that Dr. Henry Kipperton, who is the Economic Growth Director at the Combined Authority, is more than happy to come to a scrutiny committee of this council to discuss the Combined Authority. And I think it's very pertinent that we invite him, considering he has authored the region's bid and asks to government in terms of financial requests and power requests as an outcome of COVID. And he's the one who authored what's referred to as the Northeast COVID recovery document. And also it would be worthwhile us inviting Helen Golightly, who's the Chief Executive of the LEP, just to hear the initiatives that they've had during COVID, because that might not appear on everybody's radar, but there's maybe a couple of businesses in Northumberland or that employ our residents that have benefited from schemes of the LEP, especially around schemes to do with like STEM, science, technology and maths areas. So I think it's worthwhile that we invite those to a future meeting.
Thank you. Sean, can we see if we can invite them to a meeting and see if we can put that in the diary if possible?
Yes, we've got Julie Emma coming to the January meeting to talk about the economic recovery from COVID. So I will liaise with Julie Emma on that, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think Councillor Ruffhead raises a very important point. It's on the back of the question that I was asked at Council last week about North of Tyne. I'm actually just now getting up to speed with all the work that's going on there, and I'm very supportive of the joint working that's going on. There's actually a really good document that's all about the recovery process and what North of Tyne want to do, working with the other constituent authorities. So when I answered the question, I said I think one thing that perhaps we don't do enough is actually explain what North of Tyne, what Borderlands, what the LEP actually do and what they're working on within the region, but also within the county as a whole. And I think Sarah McMullen is actually looking at that and wanting to do an update. But I think coming to your committee is a really good idea. On the other point about the state of the nation, Gregor, I've found over the years that it's always ended up, the ones I can remember, when we've had the council leader and maybe the chief executive talk about what we plan to do, but there's never really, in my view at least, sufficient dialogue and exchange. So we often seem to be talking at people but not listening to what they say back. So that's why I'd like to try this idea and see if we can get some genuine, what I would call really genuine consultation, rather than doing it simply on the local area council committees, but actually trying something new. And it would be to explain where we are as a council, but to hear what people would like us to do more of or better going forward.
Okay, thank you. Any other members like any questions on this report? No? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next thing on the agenda, which is the Appendix D, which is the work programme. Sean?
Yeah, nothing to add, Chair. A number of issues are still coming forward for the forward plan. I think at the last meeting, Janice Rose indicated that there would be further borderland reports coming through, and she did give a commitment to give members an overview on the borderlands process, and that may sort of tie in with the previous discussion as well, Chair.
Okay. One thing that Councillor Robinson did sort of raise earlier on was that perhaps we should get reports on some of the profit generation arms of the council. Oh yes, I've made that note, and we'll make sure that we circulate that to the committee. Get that onto the agenda. That would be helpful. Thank you. Yeah. Right. Moving on to urgent business, if any. No urgent business. Okay. Well, thank you very much. We've got to that less than an hour, so thank you all for your speedy and erudite contributions, and I look forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.